का नेटवर्क चला गया इसलिए मैं सर कॉल पर आए।
फिर क्योंकि प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी, अगर बहुत सारे लोग आ गए ना फिर स्पेस खत्म हो जाएगी। ऐसे होता है ना?
सर आ रहे
हैं।
सर मैं सबको इन कर देती हूँ तो मैम का भी होगा तो आ जाएगा।
Sir, now I said we should add the participants.
ओके सर।
ओके
सर आई विल एडमिट दैट।
सर का वीडियो ऑफ है क्या सर का?
हाँ सर पॉज करके अभी कहीं गए हैं, मतलब वीडियो चालू है, म्यूट किया हुआ है।
इन्स्ट्रुमेंटेशन ओके. आणि कसं आहे आपण कॉलेज बरोबर अजून बऱ्याचशा गोष्टी आहेत की जे आपण तुम्हाला डिप्लोमा किंवा असं हे शिकवत असतो. वेगवेगळे सर्टिफिकेट कोर्सेस आहेत, IIT चे, NPTEL चे वगैरे, इंटरनॅशनल काय सर्टिफिकेशन आहेत ते आम्ही करायला हे करतो तुम्हाला.
Thanks for letting me know. Pulsar के spelling गलत हो जाता है.
राजीव सर को भी अनम्यूट करो।
वो सर ही कर पाएंगे।
अच्छा सर ही कर पाएंगे।
Hello, Dr. Abhishek. How are you? Yeah, please unmute yourself. Abhishek.
Good morning, sir.
Hi, sir. Good morning.
How are you?
Yes, fine. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and what is the condition in Oman?
It's better than other part of the world, sir. Actually, where I am staying, that part only 20 to 30 patients are there. So it's under control.
Yeah, that means in Oman it is under control.
Not in Oman, whole Oman. Muscat side, there are lots of patients. Means around 10,000 patients are there. But I am in Salalah. So in Salalah, only 30 patients are there. Out of 30, around 20 already recovered. So only 10 are still sick. So we can say it is under control.
Yeah, yeah. So that means your part, that is a control, and but there is a problem in Oman.
Yes, yes, yes. Still, the numbers are increasing.
Okay, okay. So our vice chancellor.
Sir, ma'am is here. Sir, ma'am is here or not?
The message is coming.
Connected. Getting connected.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Madam is connecting.
Visible.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yes.
She's connecting.
Yes, ma'am.
So, the participants have joined from not only from this various part of the country. Some participants have joined from abroad. One of, yeah. There, madam. Yeah.
Very good, director, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I think we should start the proceeding. Actually, we are late by 5 to 10 minutes, 7 minutes due to this network problem and the electricity problem. So, on behalf of Sri Vaishnav School of Management, Sri Vaishnav Vidyapit Vishwavidyalaya, so I, Dr. Rajiv Shukla, welcome all of you. Especially welcome the resource person of Professor Dr. Upinder Dhar, Vice Chancellor of Sri Vaishnav Vidyapit Vishwavidyalaya, and distinguished professor of management. I thank all the participants who have joined not only from the country but also from abroad. Actually, the role of research is that in COVID-like pandemic situation that necessitated the demand for research and innovation, where there is no medicine available for treatment, then none other option is available than research and innovation medicine. So that is a basic importance. Why? What is the importance of the research? The quest for knowledge is the basic principle behind research. We constantly strive to improve through research. The wider cause for conducting research is to improve quality of life. Quality of research translates to the quality of teaching and learning in the classroom, thereby benefiting the students, the society, and the country. The other narrower reasons could be personal satisfaction of contributing to existing body of knowledge, science, and the society. Recognition and appreciation by peer in the profession, acquiring a job, getting a job promotion, or even to retain a job. It is well accepted that just I'm starting the recording as well. It is well accepted that academic research has contributed enormously to find solution to many problems faced by our society and industries. The emerging importance of interdisciplinary field has given rise to institutional collaboration that allow knowledge to be pulled together. Often it is industry which is the ultimate beneficiary of the research. In a globalized world, the role of research in an academic institution is significant for its sustainability and development. And it is imperative to have knowledge-driven growth based on innovation. Research provides basic inputs that can be used for planning and policy decision making. Needless to say, academic research is an integral part of uh, global development. As we know, from initiation of research idea to the ultimate culmination in publication, there are many segments or stages. Initiation of a research idea, thorough literature search, formulation of a research question, proper study design, possible source of funding, conduction of research, analysis of data obtained, proper interpretation of results and publications in a peer-reviewed journal. For academicians, it is mandatory to do quality research, and they are also expected to publish it in peer-reviewed journal so that the research can be presented to the world without any ambiguity. We are fast approaching towards the publish or perish principle adopted by the West. Our vice chancellors are always mention this, either publish or perish. That is going to be the future of the academicians. Well, the importance of conducting this type of webinar is important for sharing of knowledge. In research, ethical practices needs to be adopted and followed. There are many examples of biased research in literature. It is not possible to differentiate between biased research outcomes from unbiased without a proper understanding of each aspects of research methodology. We are fortunate enough that distinguished professor of management and vice chancellor of Sri Vaishnavidya Vidyalaya Indore, Professor Dr. Upinder Dhar, is with us to share his wisdom with introduction of scientific research. Conduction of research rightly said that conduction of research involves science and subsequent discussion, documentation, publication requires scientific writing, which is an art in itself. Professor Dhar is distinguished practitioner of art of management through scientific temperament. So before inviting Professor Dhar, I invite Dr. Anupam Singh. So briefly introduce Professor Dhar to the audience.
Thank you very much, sir. Very outset, very good morning to one and all. I'm Dr. Anupam Singh. Welcome you all to the day one of the 1 week webinar on the research methodology. Thank you all for the joining with us, as we do not need any introduction about our resource person, Dr. Upinder Dhar. The name itself is an introduction. However, I take pride in reading his profile to present his achievement amongst us. Dr. Upinder Dhar is a Vice Chancellor of Sri Vaishnavidya Vidyalaya Indore. Earlier, he was Group Additional Vice Chancellor and Pro Vice Chancellor Academics, MT University, Uttar Pradesh, Noida. First Vice Chancellor of J.K. Lakshmipad University, Jaipur. Director, Institute of Management, Dean Faculty of Management, and Dean Faculty of Doctoral Studies and Research, Nirma University, Ahmedabad. Director, Prestige Institute of Management and Research, President, Prestige Group of Educational Institutions, Indore. Professor of Management at NITI, Mumbai. Reader at IMS DAVV, Indore. He has conducted more than 600 management and faculty development programs for the executive of major business houses and faculty members of academic institutions respectively. Sir has been guest faculty at top institutions of country like IIM Calcutta, IIM Indore, IIM Trichy, and IIT Roorkee. Besides taking consultancy assignments, he has authored and co-authored more than 640 publications. 34 research scholars have been awarded PhD degree under his supervision by various universities. Dr. Dhar, a strong proponent of case method, was conferred Rabi J. Mithai National Fellow Award by Association of Indian Management Schools in 2018. National Fellowship by Indian Society for Training and Development in 2002 and 3. He has been the panel reviewer of number of journals such as International Journal of Training and Development, Human Resource International Journal of Global Business and Technology, and South Asian Journal of Management. He has also been on the panel of experts maintained by NBA Bangalore, NAC Bangalore, ICSSR New Delhi, and SAQS Hyderabad. He has been president of Anthropological and Behavioral Sciences section of the Indian Science Congress Association 2007 and 8, Indian Society for Training and Development 2008 and 9, Association of Indian Management School 2014 and 15. He has also been member of the expert committee on the specification of degrees, UGC New Delhi, Council of Management AIMA, member of ATMA, All India Board of Management Studies of AICTE, Rajasthan State Productivity Council, Governing Board of DELNET, DELNET, that is DELNET, member of executive board of AMD ISA. He had the opportunity to visit EB League institutions like Harvard Business School, MIT Sloan School of Management, Yale University of Management. He has visited more than 15 countries for the professional and academic interests. So I struggle very hard to compact in a very short manner, looking at the time constraint, just to just present you area of interest of our resource person. Sir's research interest lies in organizational behavior, human resource management and development, organizational development, consumer behavior, entrepreneurship, mental health, general management, and finally institutional building. So without further delay, I welcome our resource person. Sir, welcome and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anupam. First of all, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the participants to this workshop. Well, this is not just a webinar. This is a workshop which we will be doing for 5 days. Because of COVID-19 and lockdown, we are using e-resources now. We are using online resources now. But going back, say about 20 years, we felt that some work needs to be done to facilitate the teachers in the country to develop interest in research and do it in the right manner. You see, even at that time, it was felt that many of our faculty members were not publishing international, or some of us were sending it abroad, but it would be rejected, or there would be a revision, though one always learned from such revisions. So it was felt that, well, something could be done to facilitate the faculty. So it was in the way back in 2003 that we felt that let us have an annual research methodology workshop of 1 week for the benefit of the faculty members. And since then, we have been doing it continuously, almost, I think, without any break. Wherever I have been, whether I was in Prestige or Niti or Nirma or JK Lakshmipati University, wherever I have been, we have made a point that we'll do this. We conduct this workshop at least once in a year. Basic, as I said, the purpose was to facilitate the young faculty to think of doing research, to think of good research problems which are researchable, and then following the right methodology. So now, in the last 17, 18 years, a lot of effort has gone into it, and many people have been benefited by it. Coming to this workshop specifically, now since, as I said, we are doing it first time online. So far, till last year, it was done in the face-to-face manner when people would come down to the campus and we would interact. Then participants would go to various companies and collect the data. Or if it is to be collected, if the data was to be collected in the lab, they would go to the lab. So depending upon the area of interest. And then by the end of the workshop, we had something in hand. So each group, because all the participants were divided into various groups. So each group would work on a topic, a particular topic. So by the end of the workshop, everybody would have something in hand or something substantial on which one could continue working. Now, because of this COVID-19, which has disrupted everything across the world, it's a global phenomenon. Businesses, business houses, businesses, non-business houses, even educational institutions are disrupted in the sense that the normal work is not happening the way it used to happen. But it's a temporary phase. We need not to feel disheartened. At the same time, one advantage in our profession, that is teaching profession, particularly in higher education, we have been able to shift from classroom to Zoom. So through Zoom, we have been able to engage our students for last 2 months now, and also faculty and colleagues and other people across the country. The advantage of technology is that we're not restricted to the country now. Whatever we interact, whatever we do, whatever we deliver, it goes across the world because internet connects all the countries. So as somebody has said, that it is a global village now. So in this global village, we get connected. So that is the advantage of it. And other advantage is that, well, we can reach more people at a time and then see to it that by the time our workshop is over, something meaningful comes out of it. Okay, now see, why to do research? And then question arises, how to do it? First question is why to do it? And if we ask ourselves, why should we go for research? What is the normal answer? Normal answer, or generally people say, well, we want to do research because we want to discover something new. We want to add to the existing knowledge. We want to see the reality from a different perspective. That's why we want to go for the research. Now, once we decide that, well, we should go for research, we need to be very clear about certain salient features of research, which are very essential before we start our journey on in any of the areas of interest. First one is purposiveness. Whatever we intend to do, it should be purposeful. If it is not purposeful, there is no point. We will not reach anywhere. So when we make a beginning, purpose should be clear. Purpose should be in the mind. Why we are going to do it. Why we are taking steps for doing the research. So first point is purpose. Why? Second is, once we start our journey towards excellence, so far as research is concerned, for discovering certain new facts, for identifying and adding new knowledge to the existing knowledge, there should be rigor. Second point is rigor. First is purposefulness or purposiveness, we can say. Second is rigor. There should be rigor. See, when we say rigor, research begins with review of literature. Unless there is a rigorous review of literature, we will not be able to understand that what is the current understanding of the mankind about a particular area of understanding. So rigorous review of literature is very important. Secondly, once we have reviewed the literature, then when we are collecting the sample, when we are collecting the data, we have to be rigorous even in that. We cannot be miser in collecting the information, in collecting the data. It has to be rigorous. So rigor is very important. So first, purposiveness. Second, rigor. Third is testability. You see, research problem should be testable. If we cannot test it, the whole effort will be futile. If there is something which we can't observe, we won't reach anywhere. Therefore, the research problem has to be such that it is testable, so that we can test it in the lab, we can test it in the field, we can test it anywhere which is our area of research. If we are working in society, we should be able to test it in the society. If we are working in industry, say organization, we should be able to test that research problem in the organization. So third point is testability. Purposiveness, rigor. Thirdly, testability. Then the next point is replicability. Whatever work we do, it should be replicable. Anybody else, anywhere, should be able to replicate it, should be able to do it the same way or again, maybe in a different way, but the problem has to be such that it is replicable, so that it could be, whatever work one has done, it could be validated by somebody else, by another researcher. So that is very important. Fifthly is precision and confidence. So precision, again, is important. We have to be very precise, very specific. When we are talking about our results, when we are concluding our findings, we have to be precise. So it should not be vague. We should not beat the bush. We should not be beating the bush. We should be very specific that, well, when we are talking about results, this was the hypothesis based on our problem, and this is what we have found. So very specific. Or when we are concluding, we have to be very specific that this was the objective of work, and this is what we have found, how we are fulfilling that objective. Be specific, be precise. Precise, and then the researcher must have confidence in what he or she is saying. He will have confidence, or she will have confidence, if the first 4 points are met. That is, in terms of purposiveness, rigor, testability, replicability. If it is there, if the statistical, if the quantitative techniques are correctly used, statistical techniques are correctly used, or qualitative methods are correctly used, the researcher will be having confidence also. Next is objectivity. We should be objective in our derivations, more as objective as possible. We must always make an attempt to minimize subjectivity. Subjectivity should be minimized and be objective in what we are saying. Next is generalizability. We should be able to generalize. If we have done some study, people elsewhere should be able to generalize it. The generalizability is very essential, very important. Otherwise, it will be restricted to a very limited area of understanding. So the generalizability is, for example, if we are talking about what work Einstein has done, that has to be generalizable. Whether we are in Japan, we are in United States, we are in India, or anywhere else, it should be generalizable. The Newton gave 3 laws. So those laws are generalizable. We can generalize anywhere, wherever one is on Earth. We can see that Newton's law works. Finally, parsimony. Parsimony is again very important factor for any kind of research. Parsimony here means we should use as much resources as much required. So we should not waste the resources. So wastefulness should not be. We have to be frugal. We have to be very particular about not wasting the resources. We have to be economize it. Use that is required, not doing it just extensively. So these are 8 important steps which one must remember before starting any kind of work. So I just would sum up so far as these points are concerned: purposiveness, rigor, testability, replicability, precision and confidence, objectivity, generalizability, and parsimony. So every researcher, irrespective of the field of study, whether it is in science, social science, management, any field of study, literature, whichever area, these points are applicable across board. Everybody can remember, should remember these 8 points. Now I would take you to the basic part, the foundation part. You see, though I know the participants who are attending this webinar, this workshop, are already in the field. Either they are already faculty, even some of them are senior faculty, and some are deans, directors, and then at the same time we have some very young friends who are assistant professors. Even we have younger ones. There are some who are research scholars. So research scholars is one end of the range, and senior people, directors and deans, are on the other side of the range. Therefore, but at the same time, I have seen, see, I had the opportunity to edit a number of journals in my career, right from, I think, about for 35 years, for last 35 years. In my career of 42 years, I have been associated with various editorial teams in last 35 years. So I had the opportunity to edit a number of journals, good journals, well-known journals. And I have found that even some senior people who would send research papers, there are a number of mistakes. There may be methodological mistakes, there may be grammatical mistakes. So therefore, it is necessary that one should not feel shy in remembering the basics of research. You see, when we study research methodology, we cannot just forget it without after appearing in the examination. No, research methodology is such a subject which we need to remember if we join academics, if we teach, if we start teaching, or if we join educational institutions, or if we join a research institution. We have to remember research methodology, because we will be requiring guidance, how to go about a problem, how to, what kind of design should be used, and so on and so forth. Therefore, research methodology we need to remember. But unfortunately, what we have observed, that people tend to forget. When one grows in the hierarchy, then one tends to forget that what was the whatever the fundamentals of research. One starts believing, not everybody, some people start believing, no, that is fundamental. I had studied it when I was young, or when I was in master's degree, or master of philosophy degree. But now why should I remember? But no, one has to remember, because one has to use the right methodology anytime when one starts working on a problem. So therefore, let me take a just quick journey to the basics. Say definition. When we talk about the definition, the research is concerned with the systematic gathering of information. All of us know it, but we need to remember. See, many times we don't remember. We need to remember that, very broadly speaking, research is concerned with the systematic gathering of information. Secondly, its purpose. See, I'm again talking about purpose first, because purposiveness is very important. Its purpose is to help us in our search for the truth. So when we talk about research, why do we go for research? Because we want to explore the truth. What is the truth? there are some terminologies which we very often use, and we need to remember. Say a variable, which is any variable refers to any general characteristic that can be measured and that changes in either amplitude, intensity, or both. A dependent variable is a response that is affected by an independent variable. An independent variable is the presumed cause of some change in the dependent variable. So many times what we do, we study cause and effect relationship. Say if X happens, that will result into Y. So cause and effect relationship is studied. So generally, we identify certain variables. One variable which causes and the other variable on which the impact is seen. So one is the independent variable, other is the dependent variable. There can be multiple independent variables, multiple dependent variables in a particular study. And there is another one that is extraneous variables, or some authors call them additional variables. Extraneous variables or additional variables are those which a particular researcher is not studying, which is not under focus. So he or she has to control it so that the researcher can ensure that he or she is measuring the impact of independent variables on the dependent variables. Therefore, the extraneous or additional variables which are already there in the environment needs to be controlled. For that, he has to use the robust research design so that the researcher is confident that he has really or he has actually studied, say, X and Y, and the impact of Z is under control, maybe by randomization, maybe by elimination, and so on and so forth. Similarly, we talk about theory, which is a set of systematically interrelated concepts or hypotheses, that is plural, hypotheses that purport to explain and predict phenomena. I'm just quickly going through it because I know many of you already know it, but I'm trying to remind everybody that we must remember these basic concepts of research. A problem is an interrogative sentence or statement that asks what relation exists between two or more variables. A tentative explanation about the relationship between two or more variables is called a hypothesis. Here it is singular. SIS is singular. SES is plural. Well, another important point which we need to remember is that what are the methods of knowing? How do we know what is the truth? How do we know that what we are saying is really correct? See, broadly, 4 methods of knowing have been identified. One, method of tenacity. Second, method of authority. Third, method of intuition. And the fourth, method of science. They are in a progressive order. See, method of tenacity means that when one learns by trial and error, one may experience something again, second time he experiences the same thing, so he learns through experience, maybe by trial and error. This is the one end. Then next is method of authority. One learns because some authority is saying it, an expert is saying it. Or here expert doesn't mean, it is not in the very strict sense an expert. It may be anyone who is perceived as an expert or authority. For example, for a very small child, mother is perceived the authority. So when a small child starts believing in something because mother has said it, or say father has said it. So he is learning about something from that authority source. Similarly, in the organizational context, authority is the senior person. Authority is the management, the people at top management level. Same way, in different contexts, so authority is the one who is perceived to be the authority, one who has adequate knowledge in that particular field. Say scientist, a senior scientist is taken as an authority in his discipline by the young scientists. So this is the second source or the second method of knowing. Third method is by intuition. Archimedes' principle is one of the best examples. By intuition. So you keep on thinking about some problem, keep on thinking, you're not getting the satisfactory solution. But then you keep on working on, maybe, and it slips to the subconscious. Subconsciously also your work is going on in the brain. And then all of a sudden, when you are doing something else, solution comes. When Archimedes was in the bathtub, he got the idea, a flash. When an idea, a solution comes as a flash, that is intuition. So intuitive thinking. So this is the third method of knowing the truth. And finally, which is considered the best and the most scientific, that is the method of science. We should aim for method of science. So every researcher should aim for using the method of science, because method of science is the most scientific, most objective. So it has all those characteristics which we think science has. So ambiguity is not there, precision is there, and so on and so forth. So it is, as I mentioned, these methods are progressive in nature, from tenacity to the method of science. We need to remember, we are not expected to forget these basics with the examination. We have to remember, even when we are in the profession, we grow, but we need to remember it. We need to remember these methods. Then now about the aims of research. When we conduct a study, when we plan a study, certain aims are there. What I want to do, what for I am trying to do it. Say maybe I am trying to build up a story, this theory over the period of time. Maybe I am simply reporting what is happening. If there is a particular phenomenon which is taking place, what is happening, how that happens, why that happens. Say, for example, whatever we eat, it is digested. Stomach works on it. Intestines work on it. How this is happening. So when scientists must have worked on it long back, that time they must have simply reported what is happening when food goes inside the stomach. Then what happens? Gastric acid starts working on the food and so on, and then it passes on to the intestines and so on and so forth. So simply reporting the phenomenon, what is happening. Or if we are, say, for example, trying to test a particular drug, so we may test it on the mouse, and then while after injecting that particular drug in a safe dose, we try to report how did the mouse respond to that particular drug. So that is reporting. Similarly, aim could be simply descriptive, simply describing a phenomenon. Why something is happening. So we describe it. So stage-wise, step-wise, we try to describe. That is description. Next is explanation, where we justify. We try to justify why something has happened the way it has happened. So that is explanation. See, description and explanation are different. In description, we are simply describing the way it is based on our study. Whereas in explanation, we go into why it is happening. So we go into the justification part through our study. Then further prediction. Based on our study, we will predict certain phenomena. We may predict that if this happens, what is going to happen. So our meteorologists predict the weather based on certain indicators. When they see those indicators, they are able to predict. So any researcher who must have first of all discovered it, that identified the indicators, so far as the weather, about the weather, how weather is going to happen, change over the period of time, maybe next 24 hours. The scientists who must have worked on that at that time, they have done the work which has resulted in enabling the people, enabling the researchers, enabling the scientists to predict. So it can be predictive in nature. Further, in fact, the last aim, which is very important, is control. By doing certain research, we may learn to control. Say, as right now, across world, scientists are working on the vaccine for managing coronavirus. So why they are doing it? Why they are working for vaccine? Because the disease which has come all of a sudden and resulted in a pandemic across the globe needs to be controlled. How can it be controlled? So across the country, across the world, people are working. There are more than 100 vaccines which are being tested. So why are they doing it? For control, for controlling the pandemic. You see, when Spanish flu had come in about 100 years back in 1918 to 1920, about 2 years was there at its peak. That time also scientists worked on how to control the flu, how to manage this flu. Although by the time it was possible to control the disorder, there were about 500 million people across the world who were affected. There were around 50 million people who passed away, who died. They lost the battle against Spanish flu at that time. Similarly, right now with COVID-19, coronavirus also it is happening. We already know that across the world, we already crossed 6 million people getting affected by coronavirus. And similarly, a few lakhs having lost their lives. Now the question is how to control it. So scientists across the world are working on controlling this pandemic. So research is also conducted to control. It helps us, it enables us to control certain phenomena. Now coming to the scientific decision. See, the definition that I gave in the beginning, that's a very common, very generalized definition. In general, how we can define research, but so far as scientific research is concerned, because as I mentioned, when we talk about method of knowing, moving from tenacity to method of science. So we should always aim to use the method of science, be scientific in our approach, develop the scientific temper. If we have the scientific temper, we can arrive at the truth. If we don't have the scientific temper, we may not be able to discover truth. We may be in illusion. What we may consider truth may not be truth. So that's why we have to make it a point that we are having scientific approach towards an issue, towards a problem. So scientific research is systematic, controlled, empirical, and critical investigation of hypothetical propositions about the presumed relations among natural phenomena. So this is the definition we have to remember, and these are the steps we can say the elements of scientific research. One, it has to be systematic. First requirement is it has to be systematic. It cannot be haphazard. It has to be systematic. One, approach has to be systematic. One, second, controlled. Controlled in the sense we should be confident we are measuring the impact of X on Y. If Z is not our variable, we are controlling the impact of Z. So control, sufficient control is important. Otherwise, we may incorrectly measure the impact of X on Y if we are not controlling extraneous variables. So we need to have adequate control, in fact, full control on other variables which are not under study. So it should be systematic, it should be controlled, it should be empirical, it should be data-based, it should be based on the reality. So how would we know the reality if we are empirical in our approach? We need to see that what we are collecting, it is actually the real one. So it has to be empirical. We should in fact prefer to go for empirical work. And then it has to be critical investigation of hypothetical propositions, the tentative answers, the tentative solutions that we plan, that we give to the research problems. We have to be critical. We should not be simply what we have seen, we have reported. That is not enough. We need to use the available research. We need to use available knowledge. That is why scientific approach to review of literature is very important. Review of literature, as you know, is very important at every stage. In the beginning, it is important. It has to be exhaustive. While we are working, it has to be there. Therefore, we can go for a critical investigation. It is possible to go for critical investigation only if our hypothetical propositions are based on available knowledge, available literature. So literature which is reported, which is available, which is scientific in nature, has to be taken into consideration. We need to go through it, and based on that foundation, we make the hypothesis. But then there has to be critical investigation of those hypothetical propositions about the presumed relations among natural phenomena or the problems that we have identified. Now, another important point is in research, which we always need to remember, irrespective of our position in the career, whether we are just beginners in our career as a research scholars or assistant professors, or even if we have reached the peak of our career, maybe as deans and professors, deans, directors, and so on, we need to remember the good research is very important. But what signifies good research? See, it is a very common statement. Many times we say, well, we should do good research. But what is that good research? How would we identify that, well, this is good research and this is not good research, or that is not good research? How would we do that? So the good research can be thought of as that which uses the scientific method. The first characteristic of a good research is scientific methodology or scientific approach. If approach is not scientific, it is difficult to say whether the work that has been done is really good or not. So approach has to be scientific. And I have already mentioned what are the components, what are the elements of scientific research. So first of all, systematic. It has to be systematic, and so on and so forth. One widely accepted view suggests that good research should meet the following tests. There are certain tests which any research should meet. And based on that test, we can say whether it is good or not so good. One, the purpose of the research or the problem involved should be clearly defined and sharply delineated in terms as unambiguous as possible. This is the first test, as I said in the beginning of this deliberation. The purposiveness is very important. In fact, the first point that we must always remember. So that purpose has to be very clearly given. It should be, the researcher must have clarity on what is the purpose of his work. So that is the first you can say identity of good research. It should not be unambiguous. It should not be unclear. It should not be unclear. It should be very clear. It should be clear. It should be clean. It should be specific, and it should be understandable. Second, the research procedures used should be described in sufficient detail to permit another researcher to repeat the research. See, you may recall one of the characteristics, as I mentioned, was replicability. So other researchers anywhere should be able to replicate it, validate. So how can another person validate? How can another researcher do that? Unless procedure is clearly described, procedure is clearly given in the work. So the research procedures used should be described in sufficient detail. So we should not hush up. We should not just give brief only. We should give in detail how researcher has approached the problem, how he has proceeded, what was the method, and so on and so forth. So how, what were the gaps in the available knowledge, and so on. Thirdly, the procedural design of the research should be carefully planned to yield results as possible. As I mentioned when we were talking about design, see, design plays a very significant role in research because design helps us, or it enables us to have control on the extraneous variables or on the additional variables, the variables which we are not studying in a particular investigation, which are not being studied either as independent variables or dependent variables, or extraneous or additional variables. So how would we do that? We can do that only with a scientific design. We can do it with a very robust research design. If the research design is robust, that helps us, that brings confidence in the researcher that, well, whatever are the results, those results are due to the independent variables which he has identified. Those dependent variables or those effects or the outcome is because of something which he has changed. So by making a change in one variable, he is seeing change in another variable. So he will be confident that yes, this change in another variable has happened because first variable was changed. So extraneous variables, then that confidence can be there only if extraneous variables are under check. So that's the importance of robust research design. So procedural, many times we call it procedural design, the stepwise, step by step, how researcher has ensured control on these additional variables. The researcher, next is the researcher should report with complete frankness flaws in procedural design and estimate their effect upon the findings. You see, many times it has been observed that researcher has not frankly disclosed everything that he or she has observed, which is not correct. Researcher has to be frank. Researcher has to be transparent. Researcher has to report what he or she has observed in the course of study. So it should be mentioned. So that makes report very important. The report has to be matter of fact. Many times we have observed that in certain reports, young researchers write stories which may not have anything to do with the research problem that the person has identified. So we need to avoid writing stories. We should be very clear about what we have observed and report it. So we should be transparent, or say we should be frank. We should be frank in our reporting. That is very important. Flaws in case there are any limitations, in case there were any limitations in the work that we have done, well, report those flaws. If there are any procedural flaws, if we could not control certain things, we should report it. So that's why limitations of research are important. Limitations should be reported. Similarly, if there are certain things which we could not do because of the say paucity of say funds or other resources, report it. If you would have liked to do something else also, report it. So limitations should be presented in the report, and limitations, even some suggestions can be given so that future researchers take up those perspectives. The next, so far as the good research is concerned, is analysis of the data should be sufficiently adequate. It should not be sketchy. So it should be sufficiently adequate to reveal its significance, and the methods of analysis used should be appropriate. See, many times what we have observed, the analysis is not in depth. It is sketchy. Unfortunately, in many research, we find percentage has been found and report has been written and closed, which is not enough. That doesn't give us much idea. That doesn't give us the ability to generalize the findings. We cannot generalize the findings. So in-depth analysis is very important. We need to use sophisticated tools. It may be quantitative tools, it may be qualitative tools, but those tools should be used for in-depth analysis. So in-depth analysis and the use of appropriate methods is very important. You see, many times when we, in the past, when we conduct the viva voce of research scholars, sometimes they say, well, when we ask them, well, you have gone for this analysis, why you have done this type of analysis? You should have done another type of analysis. Say, why have you used t-test? Why you have not used that test? Sometimes we get very funny answers. Sometimes the researchers say, grown-up people, researchers say, well, my supervisor said that you used t-test, I have used t-test. That's not the correct answer. Because ultimately, the researcher is answerable and responsible for his own work. If the guy, whatever guide or the supervisor says, the researcher or the research scholar he can ask the question. He can ask the question to understand why that particular method is used or being used, why not other method. Say, for example, why he is using Z-test, why he is not going for analysis of variance, he or she is not going for other method. So there is, he is, as a research scholar, is within his rights or within her rights to ask his or her supervisor so that he can understand why, he or she can understand why particular method is used. There is nothing wrong in asking. But the answer that since supervisor told me that's why I have done it is not right. So one should ask the supervisor and get the right answer. Because supervisor is like guru in our culture. Supervisor is the guru. So he has every candidate or the student or the research scholar has every right to ask the question, appropriate question, and seek the answer from his guru. And guru is within his rights to give the answer and make the scholar or make the younger researcher understand why a particular method is being used. Therefore, we should not use superfluous analysis. We should not use analysis for the sake of analysis. We should be very clear why we are using a particular technique, why we are using a particular method. That is very important. Then further, conclusions. Conclusions should be confined to those justified by the data of the research and limited to those for which the data provide an adequate basis. See, here again, many times we have seen not only research thesis, not only PhD thesis or MPhil thesis, even in research papers written by very senior people, we find that conclusions are not in line with the objectives of the study. It has to be. So one has to conclude in the light of the objectives and also in keeping in view the results actually obtained. The actual results obtained are to be kept in mind when we are concluding any study. So we should not conclude just talking about somebody else, some other researcher. No. We do justify our findings by citing other researchers. That happens in discussion. But in conclusion, we have to conclude our work. So our work is to be concluded in the light of objectives. So that is very important. It should not go beyond it. It should not go out of it. That care should be taken. And lastly, the last characteristic of good research is greater confidence in the research is warranted if the researcher is experienced. So greater confidence in research is warranted if the researcher is experienced, has a good reputation in research, and is a person of integrity. See, all of us know integrity is very important in research. Undoubtedly, no one can compromise on it. We have been talking about this integrity for decades, but unfortunately, in the case of PhD thesis, in recent years, we found that the works were simply having similarity with some other work to a great extent. What we call in broad, what we generally call plagiarism. So that's why our University Grants Commission had to revise the PhD regulation so that plagiarism, and there are many do's and don'ts, so that plagiarism doesn't take place. And it does not apply only to PhD thesis, it applies to every piece of research, whether done by a research scholar or a senior professor. So this principle is very important. So similarity, simply copying from somewhere, is very unethical. So we need to take care of that. So these are some of the features, some of the characteristics. If any piece of research is adhering to these points, then we can say that is a good piece of research. It's a good research. So we must remember these points when we want to have a feel good, in the sense that yes, we have done a good research. We can say we have done a good research if we have adhered to these points. Now, since we have to conclude in 1 hour, I can see Rajiv Shukla on my screen. So perhaps he is giving me the tinkle that, well, we need to conclude. You see, there are many more points which can be discussed. But here, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is not simply a webinar, giving a deliberation. Some people have listened and the webinar is over. We don't want to do it this way. We want to convert it into a workshop. And in this workshop, we want to facilitate all researchers to do some work, so that by the end of the workshop, that is by 8th, we have something in hand. Some outcome is there. Or we have something that we have started working on with confidence, and then we can keep on working. We may develop a good research proposal in this period. We may write a statistical paper. We may write a status paper. Say, for example, COVID-19. A good research paper can be written on COVID-19. A status paper can be written. Occasional papers can be written. We can write a good paper based on extensive and intensive review of literature in the field of one's interest. So many things are possible. We can, as I mentioned, we can plan a good research study. So all that is possible. So I need not to go into that, because as I see the range of participants is very diverse. On one hand, we have people from physics, chemistry, and mathematics. On the other hand, we have people from even literature and fine arts and so on and so forth. But the fundamentals I have shared with you, particularly those points which are fundamental, which all of us need to remember. So what I would expect that all of you would identify your research problems, what you want to work upon, what you want to do, start working on it. There will be, every day you will be getting input. Say tomorrow, you will be getting input on review of literature, how to review the literature. You see, unfortunately, in many cases, we have seen a candidate or a researcher is not able to differentiate between review of literature and listing of literature. See, listing is different and review is different. What is review? We will discuss tomorrow. What are different types of review? There are different types of review. What are those types of review of literature? That will be discussed tomorrow. But then we need not to wait for the sessions. You must start working on the topic of whatever research you want. As I gave an example, a status paper can be written on COVID-19. Say a status paper about COVID-19 with reference to our country. Or some paper can be a comparative study of various countries which are affected by COVID. In fact, almost all countries across the world are affected, but those countries which are worst affected, even the developed countries, the most developed countries are affected. A comparative study can be done. So we have to depend on the secondary sources of literature, sources of data which are available. So a comparative study can be done. In 5 days, we can very easily do it, and a good research can be done on it. You see, interestingly, you will be surprised to know that in these last 2 months, period of lockdown, this COVID time, internationally, 23,000 research papers have been published on coronavirus, different perspectives, social perspective and biological perspective and so on. All kinds of studies have done. So it has precipitated a lot of research, but we can also contribute in understanding the phenomenon in a better way, so that in future people are able to manage it in a better way. If any such pandemic happens, or God forgive, it may not happen. It should not happen. We will be very soon able to control it, and we must be optimistic. You see, in almost every 100 years, such things do happen. If you remember, if you go to the literature, 1720, there was epidemic of plague all over the world. Then 1820, there was epidemic of cholera all over the world. 1918, which extended to 22 years, there was epidemic of, or say pandemic of Spanish flu. And now in 2019-20, we are having pandemic of COVID or coronavirus. These things have been happening, but we need to document our work so that in future, people can use that knowledge. So there are many possibilities. You can choose the area of your interest, identify a research problem, and start working on it. I will come back again on the last day, that is 8th. And that day we'll review what various people have done. In fact, our coordinator of this workshop and Dr. Rajiv Shukla, who is the director of the School of Management, they have already made various groups. They will be sending to you the details of those groups. So you can work in your groups. You can coordinate with each other through Zoom and work together so that by 8th, that is the last day of this workshop, we are having something substantial in terms of outcome, something really good. But keep in mind, it should be a good piece of research, not doing things for the sake of doing. No, we don't want that. It should be a good piece of research so that every one of us is benefited by the new knowledge. So I will leave this session here, or if there are any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And then tomorrow you'll be meeting another resource person on research, on review of literature. Over to Dr. Shukla. Dr. Shukla.
Yes, sir. I think, sir. So I think we should take the question answer session. The first, what's the difference between method?
Hello. Hello. Voice is not coming.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, now you are audible.
Yeah, yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. The question is that, what's the difference between research method and research methodology?
You see, some researchers or some authors use them interchangeably. But some authors say, no, when we say methodology, it is referring to the subject. So when we are talking about the subject as a whole, then we may call it research methodology. And when we are writing in a research paper, we can say research method. Or when we are writing a thesis, the chapter could be called research method. But when we are talking about the whole subject, which covers everything, which covers from A to Z of methodology as a subject, then we may say research methodology. But at the same time, there are some researchers who use them interchangeably. But the consensus is that we should call the subject as research methodology. And when it's a chapter or if it's a part of a research paper, we call it research method.
Yes, someone has raised hand, so they can directly ask the question, please.
Sure.
Participants who have raised their hands, yeah, please.
My request was Dr. N.P. Gandhi. You have raised the hands. You can unmute yourself and ask the question.
The voice is not coming.
Okay, then Satyanarayan, one is here. If you are having question, you can ask. I'm saying to all the participants, anyone having any question, just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Can they send questions in the chat box?
Yeah,
okay. Everyone just send the question in the chat box. That will be communicated.
Yeah, Manisha, please check the YouTube link. If the questions are there in the YouTube, that can also be asked.
Yes.
Hello.
At the YouTube, one has asked, give me task for research. Mrs. Pratibha Jagtap. Hello.
Yeah, question is
Am I
not
audible, sir?
Yeah.
No, what is the question?
Actually, we have planned this way. We will
Hello.
Yes.
Can we incorporate review of literature in the thesis?
Yes, without thesis cannot be complete without review of literature. You see, review of literature is the foundation of any research, whatever the level. Even a research paper, review has to be there. So in the case of a thesis, review of literature has to be a chapter. It has to be there. Have you answered the question?
Yes, sir.
Sir, good morning.
Good
morning.
Good afternoon, sir. I have started.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Let one.
Can I start?
Please.
Sir, good morning.
Please.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir,
Start your question, please.
Suppose somebody has started his research 3 to 4 years back, and he has decided some objectives in that time. But during the research, I think somebody could not be completed his objectives through its implementation. So what should he do in that situation?
So are you referring to a PhD thesis or otherwise?
Some general, in terms of general, sir.
No, in general, you can always modify your objectives. If it is
We can-
general, if it's a PhD thesis, then there is a prescribed procedure in every university. Then you have
Okay.
to approach through your supervisor, approach the university authorities, and there is a prescribed procedure in every university that if objectives or if anything is to be modified in the synopsis. But if you are talking about other than PhD thesis, that's a research project, for example, then you can modify. You can if you have sufficient reasons for making a modification or amendment in the objectives, you can.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
One question is from Pratibha. Difference between purpose and objective in research.
You see, purpose is very broader in broader sense. What is the purpose of doing particular work? Is my purpose to build a theory? Is my purpose to add into a particular theory or prove or disprove a particular theory? Or my purpose is to describe a particular phenomenon. My purpose is to explain a particular phenomenon. What is the purpose? So it's a broader sense. Whereas objectives are specific to the particular study that one is doing. This is the difference.
So the next one is what is integrity of researcher?
Integrity, we are referring to the ethics in research. The integrity means, say, one should say or report honestly. One should report things as a matter of fact. It should not be manipulated. So wherever he reports the findings, they should be the same. Whether a researcher is reporting before 4 people or 400 people, it should be the same. He should not change. He should not say something in one audience and something else in another audience. No. Integrity means it has to be the same. He or she will not manipulate. So it has to be matter of fact, as found in this study that he or she has done. That is what is integrity. This is one of the
next is
integrity is one of the highest values. Yeah.
Sir, there was one question at YouTube. Good afternoon, sir. I have a startup based in Delhi and we are making an app on mindful and meditation. Please guide us on how to do competitors analysis. It was not research oriented, sir.
No, say that means if he wants to do market studies, say how other competitors are doing that kind of work. So simple, he or she has to first of all identify who are the competitors. First requirement is to identify the competitors. Number one. Number two, what are different competitors doing? How they are doing it? How in terms of method, in terms of coverage, in terms of analysis, in terms of reporting. So all these need to be studied, or all these need to be analyzed. If one is able to do that way, the researcher can help his own organization or his own or her own startup.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for your this session. Actually, we have planned that we have made a tentative group, and we will provide the list to the participants. According to that, they can proceed for the research work, and they can also send their questions, and then that can be addressed on the last day. So I thanks a lot, sir, for your guidance, and I also thanks all the participants. Please join us tomorrow at 11 a.m. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.